You just aced your hardest final exam. Like, the professor actually smiled as you handed it in.
Right.
Your parents are thrilled. You finally secured that hyper-competitive summer internship. So, why are you sitting in your car right now, just staring blankly at the steering wheel, completely unable to stop crying?
Yeah.
Or, maybe you're not crying. Maybe you're just staring at the ceiling at like 3 in the morning while your partner is fast asleep next to you, and you were quietly wondering, what would happen if you just stop trying?
If you just let it all go.
Exactly. If you just let all the spinning plates crash to the floor. Well, today we are diagnosing the high achiever's curse. We are going on a deep dive into the hidden psychology of the people who carry the world on their shoulders.
The strong ones.
Right. The ones who are universally designated as, quote, the strong one in their friend groups, their families, or especially their university cohorts.
It really is a massive silent epidemic. And what makes it so dangerous is that it completely defies our usual understanding of damage. Well, usually when we talk about a heavy burden or intense strain, there's this expectation of visibility, right? Like if you break your arm, you go to the hospital, the x-ray shows a jagged white line, the doctor points at the screen, and boom, there is your objective proof of pain.
Broken or not broken? Clean and simple.
Exactly. It's visible, and society knows exactly how to respond to it. They sign your cast and tell you to rest.
But when you step into the world of chronic high achievers, that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Completely.
We're looking at a landscape of immense, crushing pressure that is entirely invisible to the naked eye. So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the paradox of resilience. Why do the people who smile the most, who, mediate all the group chat drama, and who achieve the absolute highest accolades often harbor the deepest, most dangerous levels of exhaustion?
To answer that, we really have to completely dismantle our cultural definition of strength, because we operate under this collective, deeply ingrained delusion that being strong makes you immune to suffering.
Like strength is a fortress or something.
Right. We think of strength as a fortress. But if you look closely at behavioral psychology, or even just look at the natural world, the reality is the exact opposite. Strength doesn't protect you from pain. Paradoxically, it actually attracts it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, think about it. The tallest tree in the canopy is the one that catches the most violent wind.
That makes a lot of sense.
So when you establish yourself as the reliable one or the highest achiever, you don't eliminate pressure. You become a localized magnet for it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is a terrifying realization for a lot of people tuning in right now.
Yeah, it is.
And I know for a fact that many of you listening are that strong person. You are the one staring at the ceiling. And we're taught from day one that if you build yourself up, if you get the best grades, if you're the ultimate reliable friend, you're building a safe life.
Right.
But you're telling me that by building that fortress, I'm actually painting a giant target on my own back.
You are. And the crucial difference between you and that tall tree in the forest is that, well, the tree didn't choose its height to please the other trees.
Obviously.
Humans, on the other hand, actively construct our own burdens. We engineer our own targets out of a misplaced sense of love, duty, or an intense underlying fear of obsolescence.
We want to be needed.
Exactly. We engineer a dynamic where our utility to others basically becomes the only metric of our worth.
Let's make this really concrete. There's this foundational thought experiment in psychology called the backpack, and it perfectly illustrates how this invisible weight accumulates without anyone noticing, not even the person carrying it.
I love this analogy.
Right. So imagine you were wearing a standard canvas backpack. Now, put one textbook inside it, just one. You barely feel it, right?
Right, you adjust your posture a millimeter, but you're walking totally normally.
Exactly. Then add another book. Still fine. But then, because you handled those two books so well, someone hands you a brick.
And you take it.
Yeah, you take it. Then a few full water bottles. Then a couple of heavy cast iron dumbbells. And finally, and this is the absolute kicker, you start unzipping your bag and putting other people's emotional baggage in there.
Yep.
Because somewhere along the line, usually around your sophomore year of university or maybe your first real corporate job, you became the unpaid therapist of your friend group.
The unpaid therapist.
Yeah.
It's a role that sounds noble, but psychologically, it is incredibly corrosive.
Really corrosive.
Absolutely. Especially in high-pressure environments, like a cutthroat university program or a really competitive startup. In those places, Everyone's baseline anxiety is elevated. Everyone is desperate for an emotional anchor.
Right?
And human beings are incredibly adept at subconsciously scanning a room and identifying the person who seems to have their life together. If you're getting the A's, if you're turning your reports in on time, if you never complain, the group mind it selects you as the anchor.
So they come to you to vent.
Exactly.
They call you at midnight because their boyfriend broke up with them. They dump all their anxieties on your lap, and you take it. You literally pack it into your backpack because you want to be a good friend.
Right. And here is the neuroscience of why you take it.
Yeah.
When you help a friend in crisis, your brain releases a burst of dopamine and oxytocin.
Oh, it feels good.
It feels great. You feel valued, you feel needed. But that neurochemical reward system is a trap because it creates a tolerance loop,
Oh, like an addiction.
very much like an addiction.
Yeah.
Over time, your brain begins to associate your fundamental lovability entirely with your utility. This leads to a phenomenon sociologists call role engulfment.
Role engulfment.
Yeah. Being the reliable one morphs from a temporary action like something you do occasionally into a permanent, inescapable identity.
Yeah.
You aren't just acting strong anymore. You believe you are the strength.
But eventually, your actual physical body starts to rebel. Like your back aches, your knees are buckling under this massive, invisible load of bricks and dumbbells and everyone else's trauma.
Yep.
And here is the tragic irony of the backpack experiment. From the outside, nobody sees the bricks.
Yeah.
Your friends just see you standing there upright, holding it all together. And what do they say? They say, "Oh, wow, you are so strong."
Notice the phrasing there. They praise the strength. They do not say, well, that looks incredibly heavy. Let me take a brick out of your bag.
No, they never say that.
Nobody ever asks if you want to put the bag down because your strength is incredibly convenient for them. It regulates their anxiety to know that you are immovable.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little.
Go for it.
Because if everyone suddenly drops their backpacks and starts aggressively setting boundaries, don't we just end up with this hyper-individualistic society where nobody helps anyone?
Right.
Like, where is the line between valid self-care and just being a self-narcissistic friend who refuses to be there for people?
That is the exact fear that keeps high achievers trapped.
Right.
But you have to distinguish between genuine altruism and pathological altruism.
Pathological altruism. Okay.
Helping a friend is a virtue, obviously. But when you suppress your own need for help because you are terrified of being a burden to them, that crosses into pathology. The line between being a stellar friend and committing self-sabotage is drawn at emotional suppression.
So it's about your own internal state.
Exactly. Are you helping them because you actually have the surplus energy to do so? Or are you hyper-focusing on fixing their crises so that nobody looks too closely at the massive cracks forming in your own life?
Oh, wow. So the caregiving is actually a defense mechanism. It's a smokescreen.
Precisely. If you are always the savior, you never have to be the victim. You never have to experience the vulnerability of asking for help, which, to a chronic high achiever, feels like death.
Yeah.
This creates a profound physical manifestation of emotional pressure. The outward appearance of extreme capability completely masks an internal landscape of utter burnout. The high achiever is smiling, they're organizing the study groups, submitting pristine essays, but internally, their autonomic nervous system is firing warning sirens constantly.
And instead of resting, they double down.
Oh, always.
Which brings up a hilarious but incredibly dark archetype we see everywhere today. The hustle culture addict.
Oh, yeah.
We all know this guy. He aggressively tweets that sleep is for the weak. He drinks 3 cold brew coffees, downs 2 energy drinks by noon, literally loses his phone while he is holding it in his own hand, and has the absolute audacity to call himself productive.
It's comedic because it's so absurd.
Yeah.
But the underlying mechanism is genuinely tragic. That hustle culture archetype is demonstrating a state of manic, buffering brain burnout.
Buffering brain?
Yeah, think of a computer with 100 tabs open, the fans are screaming, the processor is overheating, and the screen keeps freezing. That is their brain.
Buffering brain. I love that. Like a video stuck at 99%.
Right.
But why do they keep opening more tabs? Like, why not just close the laptop?
Because of cortisol and adrenaline. When you are under chronic stress, your baseline cortisol levels skyrocket. You are in a constant state of low-grade fight or flight. If that hustle culture guy actually sits still in silence, the adrenaline drops, and the sheer crushing weight of that invisible backpack is going to hit his conscious awareness all at once.
Oh, so he's outrunning it.
Exactly. He will feel the exhaustion, so he keeps running, he keeps caffeinating to outpace his own physiological crash. Constant motion isn't productivity here. It is an active avoidance strategy.
Which is so relevant to the academic pressure cooker, like this manic need to keep moving, to keep achieving. It doesn't just spring out of nowhere in your 20s. It is deeply rooted in how we define success from childhood.
Absolutely.
And this brings me to a story that I think is going to hit very close to home for any university students listening.
The 98% phenomenon.
Yes. There is this confession from a chronic school topper. They score a 98% on a massive, highly competitive, heavily weighted exam.
A huge deal.
Right. From the outside, this is a pure victory. Go out to dinner, celebrate, pop champagne.
Yeah.
But their confession was that the 98% brought them absolutely zero happiness, no relief, no joy. The only emotion they registered was sheer, paralyzing terror at the prospect of getting a 97% on the next exam.
This perfectly isolates the unique mental strain of the academic high achiever. We operate on the assumption that success brings relief. But for this specific psychological profile, success actually transforms into a prison.
And the bars of that prison are made of praise.
Exactly. To understand why a 98% induces terror, we have to look at a psychological framework known as contingent self-esteem.
Okay, what is that?
Well, if your self-esteem is non-contingent, you believe you have inherent worth just for existing. You are worthy of love whether you fail or succeed.
Sounds healthy.
It is. But if you grew up as the smart kid, your self-esteem is highly contingent on external metrics. Every time that student gets a 98%, the teachers applaud, the parents beam with pride, their peers look at them with absolute awe.
Right.
The student learns, at a neurological level, I am only loved when I perform flawlessly.
So a 97% isn't just a slightly lower grade. It is an existential threat to their identity and their perceived lovability.
You nailed it. It's a concept in neuroscience called reward prediction error.
Reward prediction error.
Yes. Normally, a reward gives you a hit of dopamine. But if your brain already expects perfection, achieving perfection doesn't give you a dopamine spike. It merely prevents a devastating dopamine crash.
Oh, it sounds exhausting.
It is. The baseline expectation is so astronomically high that success feels like merely surviving, while anything less feels like a catastrophic failure. The high achiever doesn't fear the grade. They fear becoming a disappointment. They fear the slight dimming of the light in their parents' eyes. They fear their identity being revoked entirely.
So they put the mask on.
They do.
They smile, they joke around in the lab, they encourage everyone else in their study group, while internally they are fighting these massive psychological wars.
Yeah.
There's a really haunting reality to this. Invisible wounds don't bleed. And because they don't bleed, society assumes everything is totally fine.
And society actively reinforces the cage. Every time we praise someone only for their output, like, oh, you're a genius, you always get A's, you're a machine, we are adding another lock to their prison door.
Fair.
We intertwine their self-worth entirely with their academic output.
Here is where I really struggle with this, though.
Okay.
It is so easy for us to sit behind these microphones and say, hey, just disconnect your self-worth from your test scores. Don't care about the praise.
Right.
But if you are a pre-med student listening right now, and your scholarship, your grad school admission, and your future career literally depend on that 98%, how is obsessing over it, quote, unnecessary suffering? Like, the system requires this toxic behavior. Aren't we just victim blaming here?
That is a phenomenal point, and we have to be very careful not to invalidate the real-world stakes. The system is deeply flawed, and it demands extraordinary output. But we must separate the metric from the identity.
Okay.
This is where ancient Stoic philosophy provides a very pragmatic toolkit.
Yeah.
The Stoics don't say don't try. They say you must practice indifference toward the outcome while maintaining absolute dedication to the effort.
Indifference to the outcome, dedication to the effort. How does that practically work when the outcome determines your med school acceptance?
Think about what is actually within your locus of control. You control the hours you study. You control the depth of your focus. You control whether you seek help from a tutor.
Right.
You do not control the professor's grading curve. You do not control the specific questions that appear on the test. You do not control the mood of the admissions officer reading your file.
That's true.
When you obsess over the 1% difference between a 98 and a 97, you are pouring vital psychological energy into variables you cannot manipulate. That is the unnecessary suffering.
So the productive effort is the studying. The unnecessary suffering is the rumination about the curve.
Yes. If you can honestly say, I executed my study plan with integrity, then the resulting number shouldn't completely shatter your internal sense of value. You have to actively decouple your instrumental value what you can produce from your terminal value, which is your worth as a human being.
Instrumental versus terminal value.
Exactly. Because once you set that 98% benchmark, the world views anything less as a decline. You aren't just maintaining a grade anymore. You are actively maintaining a false mask of effortless strength.
You want everyone to think you got the 98% without even sweating, which forces you to hide the sleepless nights and the anxiety attacks.
Precisely.
You want to look like you woke up like that. You're trapped in a cage of praise, wearing a heavy mask, carrying a backpack full of bricks, and you are terrified of dropping a single one.
It's awful.
It is an incredibly claustrophobic way to live. And it makes me wonder if this rigid perfectionism, this constant unyielding performance of strength, leads to such invisible imprisonment. How does the rest of the natural world handle immense pressure?
That's a great question.
Because nature has been dealing with hurricanes and atmospheric pressure a lot longer than we've been dealing with finals week.
Looking at natural systems is actually one of the most effective ways to understand sustainable resilience. The mechanisms of nature provide a literal masterclass in the difference between appearing strong and actually surviving.
Let's talk about the giant oak tree and the bamboo. This is a classic visual, but when you apply it to the high achiever's psychology, it unlocks something profound.
It really does.
So picture a massive, centuries-old oak tree. It is thick, its roots are deep, its bark is like armor. It is the absolute definition of rigid, immovable strength. Now, right next to it, picture a thin, green stalk of bamboo.
In a state of calm, the oak looks vastly superior, obviously. But what happens when the ecosystem experiences acute trauma? Like what happens during a Category 5 hurricane?
The wind hits. The oak tree, because it is so rigid, because its cellular structure refuses to yield even an inch to the wind, eventually reaches its absolute breaking point.
It snaps.
The trunk splinters. It violently snaps in half. Its rigid strength was actually its fatal flaw. But the bamboo bows. It bends all the way down until it's practically flat against the mud, letting the 100-mile-per-hour winds rush right over its back.
Yes.
And when the storm eventually breaks and the sun comes out, the bamboo just stands right back up.
It's a beautiful metaphor for a concept in psychology called cognitive flexibility versus cognitive rigidity.
Okay, unpack that.
The oak tree represents the human mask of perfectionism. Perfectionism is fundamentally a rigid cognitive structure. You believe there's only one acceptable way to be: strong, flawless, unbothered.
Right.
When you refuse to bend, when you refuse to show weakness or ask for help during an acute crisis, you are acting like the oak tree. You are resisting the kinetic energy of the storm with pure tension.
And eventually the physics of the situation will overpower you. You will snap.
Exactly. Real strength, as the bamboo demonstrates, is not the refusal to bend. True strength is knowing when to bend.
Knowing when to yield.
Yes. It is the cognitive flexibility to say, the current pressure exceeds my structural capacity. I must yield. But humans, particularly high achievers, are terrible at this. We view bending as an ultimate failure.
Oh, absolutely.
We view crying or taking a mental health day or asking for an extension on a paper as a moral defeat.
We bottle our emotions, we actively push away the friends who try to help, and we just pretend everything is fine until our internal systems literally crash.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of evolutionary biology. Bending isn't weakness. Letting go of the strong mask isn't a failure. It is an active, highly evolved survival tactic to prevent catastrophic snapping. The emotional suppression that high achievers practice is actively working against their own biological imperatives.
Okay, I love the bamboo for sudden storms, like the acute crises, a breakup, or a massive failure. But what about the everyday grind? Because most of us aren't facing a Category 5 hurricane every single Tuesday.
Fair point.
Most of us are just exhausted by the sheer volume of existing. And there's another natural phenomenon that addresses this perfectly. The river and the stone. I have always thought I wanted to be the rock in the river. Unbothered. Letting things wash over me.
It's a common aspiration, but it ignores the reality of geology and physiology. Imagine that solid, immovable stone in the middle of a rushing river. The water flowing over it seems weak. It's just water. It's soft. It splashes gently against the granite.
But give it 100 years. Give it 10,000 years. That gentle, patient water completely reshapes the solid rock. It carves a deep canyon. It hollows out a mountain.
And this perfectly illustrates the medical reality of allostatic load.
Allostatic load, what is that?
Allostatic load refers to the cumulative wear and tear on biological systems caused by chronic stress. It is rarely the massive one-time disaster, the hurricane, that breaks a high achiever. It is the small, seemingly insignificant, repeated micropressures applied over a long duration.
The water drops.
Yes, the individual drops of water. What are the water drops in the modern high achiever's life?
It's the 45-minute daily commute in dead stop traffic where you're gripping the steering wheel. It's the 400 unread emails sitting in your inbox that you feel a low-grade guilt about every time you unlock your phone.
Right.
It's the constant vibrating hum of anxiety from checking the news cycle. It's the needy friend who texts you every single day complaining about the exact same problem, who never takes your advice but demands your empathy anyway.
Yes.
Individually, none of these things are a hurricane. You can handle one email, you can handle one traffic jam, but collectively,
Okay.
over 3 years.
Over 3 years, those micro stressors fundamentally alter the architecture of your brain. Chronic exposure to these drops of water keeps your sympathetic nervous system continuously engaged.
So you're always on edge.
Exactly. It actually
Yeah.
shrinks your hippocampus, which affects your memory and learning, and it enlarges your amygdala, making you hyper-reactive to threats. You are quite literally being hollowed out inside, just like the stone.
This brings up such a terrifying question. If the water is constantly carving away at us and the dam is eventually going to break, why doesn't it break when the water is highest?
Ah,
Like, I've seen this happen so many times. Someone holds it together through the most hellish finals week, or they navigate an insanely toxic family crisis with total grace and they don't break, but a week later they drop a spoon in the kitchen and completely lose their mind.
this is perhaps the most profound and misunderstood phenomenon in the entire study of resilience: the delayed collapse.
That delayed collapse.
We culturally assume that people break during the absolute hardest peak stress moments of their lives. But for high achievers, that is almost never the case. They do not break during the crisis. They break the exact moment they finally feel safe enough to stop pretending.
I have to highlight this because it is so incredibly common. People burst into tears after the final exams are completely graded and submitted. They have full-blown panic attacks after the massive corporate promotion is officially secured. They break down after the wedding is finished and the guests have finally gone home. Or, most commonly, they just sit in the driver's seat of their car and sob uncontrollably after everyone else has left the building.
Yes.
Why does our body betray us when we are finally safe?
It is not a betrayal. It is your biology functioning exactly as it was designed to.
Yeah.
To understand the delayed collapse, you have to look at the interplay between the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest state.
Okay.
The heavy mask that high achievers wear requires an immense amount of metabolic and psychological energy to keep in place.
Right, it takes effort to look that perfectly
An
unbothered.
incredible amount of effort. During the acute crisis, the exam period, the major project, the family emergency, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline. The brain's amygdala essentially screams, "We are in mortal danger. We cannot afford the bandwidth to process complex emotional pain right now. Push it down. Survive."
Ugh.
The cortisol acts as an emotional numbing agent and a physical anti-inflammatory.
Mm.
You are literally anesthetized by your own stress hormones.
It's exactly like a combat medic on a battlefield. You don't feel the exhaustion or the trauma while you're tying the tourniquets and dodging bullets. You only feel your own hands shaking when the helicopters fly away and the field goes quiet.
That is the perfect analogy. Adrenaline carries you through the firefight, but the biological and emotional bill always comes due. You cannot outrun your own nervous system forever.
It catches up.
Always. It's known as the letdown effect. When the exam is over, when the contract is signed, the brain finally signals the hypothalamus, "Okay, the threat is gone. We are safe." And the precise moment that safety is registered, the survival instincts power down. The cortisol drops.
And without the numbing agent.
Without that numbing agent, every single ounce of suppressed emotion, anxiety, terror, and physical exhaustion that you've been holding back behind the dam floods your conscious mind all at once.
The dam breaks because there is no biological imperative to hold the water back anymore, which leads directly into my absolute favorite analogy in this entire deep dive: the heavy glass of water. Because it explains the mechanics of this exhaustion so intuitively.
Walk us through the physical mechanics of it.
Okay, imagine you are standing at the front of a room and you are holding a standard normal-sized glass of water in your outstretched hand, just holding it straight out in front of you. If you hold it for 1 minute, what happens?
Absolutely nothing. It weighs maybe 8 ounces. It's light. It's easy.
Right, but what if you hold that exact same glass of water without bending your elbow, without resting your arm for an entire hour.
Your deltoid and bicep are going to start burning. The muscle fibers will begin to fatigue.
And what if you force yourself, through sheer willpower, to hold that same glass of water, arm completely outstretched, for an entire day? 24 hours.
Your arm would be completely paralyzed. The lactic acid buildup would be excruciating.
Yeah.
It would likely cause permanent muscle damage. Your brain would be screaming at you in agony.
Exactly. And here's the profound psychological insight. The absolute weight of the glass never changed.
Never.
It was always just 8 ounces of water. The problem was never the absolute weight of the water. The problem was the duration of the hold. You never put it down.
That is the absolute core of the high achiever's dilemma. It translates directly to neural bandwidth. It is not that the individual tasks you take on are impossible. Comforting a friend for an hour is not inherently destructive. Studying for a biology test is not inherently traumatic. Working a late